Teachers, don't you love that we get a whole lesson on just that little exchange with Mary and Martha at the end of Luke 10? I love the new curriculum, and I love that we've got these little targeted moments in the scriptures. In the past, I would have covered the parable of the Good Samaritan, maybe if there was time, a little moment on this one, and then moved on. I love that we have time to do this. Now, in this month, we've been working on engaging our students, and I want to show you something from the Gospel Teaching and Learning Handbook that I think is crucially important for us as teachers to understand. It's a fundamental. It's something that I had to learn as an early teacher. I have to remind myself constantly to do it, and Elder Bednar helps us out with it. So here we are, helping learners be active participants in the learning process. And Elder Bednar talks about that kind of common idiom: give a man a fish, feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime. And here's what Elder Bednar says: as parents, gospel instructors, you and I are not in the business of distributing fish. Rather, our work is to help those we teach learn to fish and become spiritually steadfast. This is such an important thing we have to realize, because a lot of teachers, if you're feeling a lot of pressure as a teacher, it might be because you are putting all the burden of the learning on yourself, and you're just in the business of handing out fish. When I learned to give some of that burden over to the students and let them learn how to fish, and saw my classroom less as a lecture and more as a workshop, that changed everything for me. And so as teachers prepare how they will teach, they should stay focused on the learners and not just on what the teacher will do. Rather than merely asking, what will I do in class today? Or what will I teach my students? A teacher should also approach lesson preparation thinking, what will my students do in class today? How will I help my students discover what they need to know? And so I'm going to give you a little exercise from our lesson today that I think is very helpful. What I did was I went through the lesson and I marked in green everywhere where the student is being invited to do something, where the burden of the learning is placed upon the students. And it starts right off the bat with a student preparation activity. So this is something maybe you would have done a couple days prior, but invite students to make a list of the activities they do in a single day. Now, if you're not into the preparation material, which I'm sure a lot of you aren't, and maybe your teenagers aren't into being given some preparation material, later in this very lesson, they have an adapted activity where you can still do this, just do it in class. But anyway, so there's a place to mark. Right here in this call-out box, invite students to try to place as many rocks as possible in a container. It's an object lesson that has to do with, you've seen it, trying to fit all these different rocks into a jar. And if you try to put the small rocks in first and then the big rocks, it never works. You have to put the big rocks in first. Anyway, it's a common object lesson about putting the most important things first. And so, have the students do the rock thing. So they're physically doing the thing in the lesson. You're engaging them. Having them look at the list that they created, think about which of these statements best describes them. So this is just a little activity, and you're going to have these 4 statements. They're going to look at those. You're going to invite the students to pay attention. This one's a weaker one. This isn't you're not going to see the students do anything other than pay attention. But pay attention. The Holy Ghost is going to help you understand how to make Christ your highest priority. There's all these classic read the scriptures and look for or pay attention to certain things. That's probably our bread and butter, is inviting students to read certain things, look for certain things. And then I didn't mark all the questions in green because specifically in the lesson, it doesn't say the students are to answer them. That's just a given. But I just left those unmarked because I think that's typically our bread and butter, right? Look at your lessons. How often do your students do anything in class? It usually has to do with you asking them questions. So I'm looking at all the other things besides just questions. Good quote here. Okay, so something for you to do, but then once you've done some board work here, you're going to have the students write their answers, or you're going to write their answers, one of the two, on the board based on these questions here. So again, the students are doing something here. Now back to the rock activity. Students could be invited to write on the rocks some of the activities listed on the board. Write the most important ones, or the ones that get you closer to Christ, on the largest rocks, and the lesser important ones on the medium and small rocks. Okay, I love it. I think it's a great object lesson. Have them kind of get it in their mind. And then this whole section, make a plan. I just marked the title because it is the students. They're going to take the burden of this thing. So if the students already did their list, you can adapt. But if they didn't do their list, which is probably, they're realizing 90% of you probably didn't, then you can have them do it now. Make their list of daily activities, determine which ones help them come closer to Christ, have them add or remove anything based on what they learned or felt today, and then make a plan. And man, that's a solid lesson. If you can just do the simple practice of looking at your lesson manual and seeing everywhere where the students are being invited to do something, and learn how to think that way, not just what am I going to do? You've got to do that, but to think, what are my students going to do? And if the answer is sit there and look at me, maybe you're in the business of handing out fish. So I invite you to change that. All right. Have a good one.